What's happening, YouTube? Cowboy here, and welcome to my Assassin's Creed Origins Weapons Guide. So, in this video, we're going to be going over all the new types of weapons in the game, also explaining their movesets, their pros, their cons, and lastly, looking at the adrenaline usage of each weapon. So in Origins, we have regular swords, sickle swords, dual swords, heavy blunt weapons, heavy bladed weapons, scepters, spears, and then lastly, unarmed. On the ranged side of things, we have hunter bows, light bows, warrior bows, and predator bows. Now, each of these weapons have their own advantages and disadvantages, as well as unique movesets, which is going to be what this video is all about. In addition to that, one of the new mechanics is called adrenaline. And just to showcase that real fast, we'll pick a fight with this guy.
Hey, I should be cautious around here.
Now, you can see right above my health bar at the bottom of the screen, there's a gold bar right now. Now it's blue, now it's gold. In short, there are two main types of adrenaline usage in this game. Gold bar adrenaline weapons will allow you to slow time and get an additional moveset with your weapon. Weapons that do this include sickle swords, heavy blunt weapons, and then scepters. The other type of adrenaline usage is going to be burst damage, and this includes every other weapon type, but it's actually broken up into two different types. We have really big upfront burst damage, or we have multiple hits burst damage. And each of those has its own particular talent point. So if you're using a regular sword or twin blade, you're going to want the overpower combo perk, which will allow you to chain a combo of light attacks after you do your overpower. Alternatively, if you're using either a spear or a heavy blade, you're going to want the overpower ultra perk, which will allow you to double the damage of that one really big hit you're going to be doing. Now for each weapon, I'm going to be going through 6 different attacks: your R1 chain, your R2, your dodge R1, your dodge R2, your charged R2, and then lastly your adrenaline move. And the first one up is going to be the regular sword. Now, quite literally, your all-rounder here, even based on the description, balanced weapon. That's quite literally what this thing is. There's nothing terrible about it. Our R1s have a constant push forward, which is very nice, ensures that we keep hitting enemies that are retreating. Our R2s are vertical sweeping attacks. Our dodge attacks involve a thrust, which is great for fleeing enemies, or a overhead slash. Now, our charge R2s, it's important to note that your charge R2 has a couple uses. It can dismount enemies off horses. With some weapons, it can knock enemies down, giving you free hits. And lastly, it can break shields. But also, while charging this, you can continually dodge around. And while charged, you can still dodge around. So, just for example, now I'm hitting R2. And you can see, even while dodging for the entire time, I still hit charge on it. So very important thing to keep in mind with those weapons. And the last thing to showcase, of course, is going to be our adrenaline, which we're going to need to find a couple enemies for here. Because the weapon does have relatively good combo potential, it's fairly easy to build up your adrenaline with it. Archer up there. You should work fine.
Hey, what the?
Oh no, you'll work even finer. Come here.
Got you, dog. Hey, what?
As I mentioned, the adrenaline for this is a big hit, followed by multiple hits.
Have your guts for that?
Oh no, he just killed him outright.
I can take him down.
Gotta find one that doesn't die outright to do that with, so I can show you the multi-hit combo.
You'll regret that.
Hey now, you're dead. Wait a second. You are dead.
You look like a beefy boy. As you can see, it wasn't a huge chain attack, but that's partially due to the fact of how fast that guy died right there. Up next on our list is going to be the Sickle Sword. Now, based on the description, technical and deadly, the Sickle Sword is a little bit trickier to use, only because it has slower attacks that are much wider. As you can see from our R1s, these are meant to hit, in some cases, 2 enemies if you're surrounded, but they're all very wide sweeping attacks. Our R2s, once again, with big, wide sweeps. Our dash attacks, our overhead, quick catch attacks to catch runners, or our dash R2s are wide. Lastly, we have the charge. Now, as I mentioned earlier, with all the slow time adrenaline weapons, we will have an alternate moveset, which we'll get when we do that. So we're going to be showing you guys that in just a moment here. You may also notice that we have a little bit more stagger potential with this weapon. You can really stay on top of enemies. And when we do adrenaline, see how the moveset changes to be very fast fluid strikes. The heavy attacks are even a little bit faster, although the moveset is similar. Next up on our list is a weapon I'm very fond of, the dual swords. Now the dual swords boast some of the best damage per second in the game, but this is of course offset by the fact that they have a short reach and you basically need to be on top of your enemy. As for our R1s, they're very spam happy, which we'll have to get rid of this guy's shield real fast. So we'll show you the charged R2 first. And as you can see, just R1, 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 R1. Pretty flashy executions on top of it. But if you ever played like Dragon's Dogma, it kind of reminds me of the Strider. You're just very quick. Our R2s are double slashes with a dash. Our dashing R1. Quick hit to the back. And our dashing R2s do an overhead. And of course, our adrenaline, which does have that chain attack bonus to really ramp the damage up. All in all, a very potent weapon in the right hands. Next up on our list, we have the heavy blunt. Now, heavy blunts in general are the hardest hitting weapons in the game, but that is offset by their very, very slow attack speed. As for our R1s, very reminiscent of using a large club in Dark Souls, just booping stuff right over the head with it. Now our R2s are unique in that they actually have a block on hit. So when we do our R2s, you'll see the weapon flashes briefly. And that weapon flash can be used to basically just force your way through an attack and then get an instant counter hit, very similar to if you parried an enemy. So just to demonstrate this, well, I'll go in a second. Other abilities, of course, we have our dash R1, which is a bit of a wide AoE attack to hit multiple enemies. And then we have our dash R2, which also does the block on hit, but changes to vertical. The charged R2 is actually probably one of your quicker attacks once it's charged up. It's just a real fast, over-the-shoulder, boom and smash type ability. Now, these guys have swords. Perfect. So, if somebody has a sword, of course, with any weapon, you can use a well-timed attack and beat a parry, after which you can follow up and you can get a free hit on them that will do more damage than normal. So, regular heavy, 449. Or regular heavy, 204. Block heavy, 249. See, once again, 449, doing it like that. 204, not getting the block in with it. So, and of course, lastly, we have our adrenaline with this, which gives us big old baseball-style swings with it. Really great for just chunking somebody, even somebody big like this guy. We're getting some good chunks in on him, and on top of that, we're constantly staggering him as well, which is quite nice. Next up on the list, another weapon I'm quite fond of, the heavy blade. Average speed, but powerful. And that's, I would actually put this past average. In reality, the heavy blade swings almost as fast as the sickle sword, while boasting very, very high damage on hit. In addition to that, the adrenaline attack of it is extremely punishing to enemies, especially if you went ahead and picked up that perk I mentioned, the Overpower Ultra. I've seen it hit upwards of 1,000 plus before. But to go into the abilities of it, or excuse me, the moveset, our R1s are vertical sweeping attacks. As you can see, the swing speed's not slow on this for being a heavy style blade. Our R2s Our wide attacks, meant to hit multiple enemies. Our dash R1s, or vertical. And then our dash R2s, which are crosses. Lastly, we have the charged attack, which is a personal favorite of mine, the spin to win. So we have a special treat to show you with this weapon. We got a level 22 FiGhTiNCoWBoy, or however you pronounce them. These guys will start spawning pretty early in the game. After one of the main quests, you kill some guy and he's like, all the FiGhTiNCoWBoys are gonna come for you, and then they show up and you fight them. But they're kind of just heavily dangerous enemies, so he is the perfect opportunity to show just how potent this thing can be with the adrenaline hit of it. So you're seeing, like, this guy is just tanking through a ton, right? Now you're ready for this. Given he does have more defense than your average enemy, still. Almost 1,000 damage on him. Beautiful, beautiful attack. Next up on our list, we have a weapon that, while not one of my favorites, is indubitably one of the best weapons when you're surrounded, and that is the spear. Now, the spear's obvious main trait here is the fact that it has huge reach and huge AoE on top of it. As you can see, our R1s are very wide sweeps, hitting every enemy around us. Our R2s are nice, solid, strong thrusts. Our dash R1, also with the sweep. Our dash R2, a jumping spear thrust, which is pretty fancy. And then our charge R2, which is a little bit unique in that when we use it, we're stationary, but we charge forward with it, and every single one of those attacks can hit the enemy. So you can see really big damage there because all of those hits from the charge and the finish hit on top of it. Now the spear's adrenaline move, which I initially thought was just a big hit like the heavy blade, it turns out you actually can execute a multi-hit with it. I only discovered this earlier because I happened to run into a phylactite that I was fighting while attempting to record the spear thing, and the phylactite actually had enough health that I had the option to execute it. So it's a very close one, and I think it hits very, very hard, easily on par with the heavy blade, which I think is probably the main reason that I didn't even know I could multi-hit. I haven't found an enemy who could survive the damn thing yet. So we'll try it on big guy here. You can see in situations like this, have multiple enemies surrounding you, you're still able to hit all of them. The damage is average, but the fact is you're hitting multiple enemies at the same time, keeping them off of you. Curious if Big Boy can survive it. Let's see. This guy got in the way! What a disappointment. Well, either way, let me know if somebody survives it for you guys, and I'd be curious to see what the multi-hit on it is. And saving the best for last, we have the Scepter. Now the Scepter, in my opinion, has no cons. It's incredibly fast, almost as fast as the dual blades. It has a long enough reach that you can hit multiple targets with it. It combos incredibly well, building up your adrenaline meter, and it has a very potent moveset when you pop adrenaline. All in all, it's in my opinion, the best weapon in the game. So, just to show what this thing can do. Boop, boop, boop. As you can see, the R1s are just a series of chain attacks we can do. See how fast it just boops enemies. Just boop, 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 boop. And when you pop adrenaline, you become the Master Snoop Booper, destroyer of crocodiles, an enemy of all guards. Like how we just annihilated all four of those guys in like seconds. It's honestly silly what you can do with the staff. To go into the rest of the attacks real fast, well, this looks like a good place to climb up where enemies won't bother me for a second. Our heavy attacks, 3-hit combo, overhead, underhead, overhead, poke, Back. Overhead. Overhead. Poke. Back. Overhead. 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 Overhead.
Mine now.
Our dash R1. Just a quick get in and boop somebody very fast. Our dash R2. Swing above. And then lastly, we'll use our charge R2. Find somebody who's not going to kill me immediately because my health is so low. But it's regenerating pretty quickly. This guy has a shield.
Keep bastard! You will pay, corpse!
Knock him down. And then just boop, 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 boop. It's also an incredibly incredibly effective weapon when coupled with traits like poison or bleed, just because the multiple hits ensure you're going to constantly proc those effects on enemies. All in all, just it comes together. It's something beautiful. Like this is the big dude from earlier. Look at this shit. Look how fast we're just ripping his health bar apart. That's silly. That was maybe half of my adrenaline for half of his life. Ridiculous. So with the melee weapons covered, let's take a look at the bows. And I think it's very apt to make a comparison to firearms based on the specialty of each bow in this game. The hunter bows would be our rifles, the light bows are submachine guns, the warrior bows are shotguns, and the predator bows being our sniper rifles. Each bow has its own special thing, the predator bow being long range precision, warrior bows you shoot multiple arrows at the same time, light bows rapid fire, while your hunter bows can be charged, and each of those abilities can be furthered in the ability tree, allowing us to fire more arrows before reloading, controlling an arrow in the air, breaking shields with the charged shot, or reducing the dispersion zone on the shot. So to start, we're going to look at the Predator bow, and just to make a more apt comparison here. So right now I have the Ranger bow out, and you can see I can't see this guy's health bar. Oh, I saw it for a split second there. It might be because he's behind some grass. So let's use a different target, like this guy over here. Can't see that guy out on the wall. Predator bow, can see him no problem. Now, you can manually just fire the Predator bow and take people out, but I really, really like the steer arrows thing. I think it's awesome. You know, and you can do some really fun stuff with it, which we're going to show you right now, like this this thing right here. We're going to... Oh! And as you can see, the arrow was on fire. So, basically, you can catch the arrow on fire and then shoot somebody with it and potentially light them on fire. Flaming arrow to the face! I mean, the fact that you can steer it means you can also just, you know, shoot somebody in the dick or really whatever tickles your fancy. So, all in all, a really cool weapon with a really cool ability. Moving on from there, we will take a look at the Hunter bow next. And the Hunter bow is, it's really like your all-rounder. No alarm. Another important thing to note is when you're looking at enemies, you can see how much damage you're going to do to them with the bow. Headshot, you can see it's going to hit more. Body shot, and you can see, as I'm staring at his head and charging, see the bar move, so that you know exactly when to let your arrow go and make it lethal. If you're ever running out of arrows, you can find them up in towers like that at forts, or alternatively you can buy them from a blacksmith for a moderate sum. But yeah, the Hunter bow, I mean, there's nothing about it that's really like, oh my god, this is so amazing. It's just, it's a decent bow. The charged attack does make it pretty potent for taking down like hippos and gators and stuff. I'm kind of tempted to let this fight go on, but... Oh, he got poisoned. Womp womp. Which on that note, poison and bleed is actually very, very potent on bows, because if you proc it, it's going to get silly to enemies. Anyway, moving on from there, next up we have the warrior bow, which as I mentioned, this is like a shotgun type bow. Now, you don't have to charge it. Charging it will make it hit harder. The real beauty of this is, you know, getting on top of somebody and shooting them in the face with 5 arrows at the same time. But because of the fact that you're shooting 5 arrows at the same time, you really gotta like stay on top of your target. Otherwise, you're just gonna run out of arrows. Like just that one guy, I'm already out of arrows, and I picked some up off his body, but even then, you know, it burns through arrows. That's the point I'm making here, is you're gonna burn through arrows with it. So yeah, you're gonna want to be somewhere with lots of arrows if you're using it, but even then, hitting somebody in the face with 5 arrows is pretty potent. And then moving on to the final, which this is probably my favorite style of combat bow, and that's the light bow. The rapid fire for it is just very, very potent. And I don't need this asshole calling for guards. We're gonna stop him real fast.
Going to kill you. Hey, wait.
It's really easy to chase somebody down while you're shooting them. On top of that, if you're on PC, you're obviously not gonna have any problem aiming. But if you're on console, you have that little bit of aim assist. You can just compensate off the aim assist and just nudge your aim up a little bit. You can just get multiple consecutive headshots with the light bow, which, kind of as you're seeing right now, the light bow is a really effective weapon for kind of run and gun, if you will. Like, we're able to move after enemies. You know, guys that are on horses, they aren't a problem. We were able to just, you know, back up and repeatedly fill that guy with arrows before you could really do anything. Which, all in all, I think makes it probably one of the best bows in the game. Like, the Predator bow is really nice for its uses, but, you know, the run and gun potential of the rapid fire bow really does make it almost unparalleled for when you're in a situation where it's like active combat and you're trying to move and run and things like that. So either way, guys, that's going to wrap up the weapons guide. If you found this useful, let me know. Hopefully I helped somebody out there with this today. And if you guys take anything away from this, it should be that regardless of a weapon you choose, every single weapon in this game is viable. They're all good. There's really no bad weapon here. One last thing I want to make mention of before we close out is damage isn't based purely on weapon alone. An important thing to remember here is your crafting upgrades. Obviously, this will increase your melee damage, whereas this will increase your bow damage. And even though it's incremental, you know, damage is damage. So, anyway, thanks for coming by and watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and we'll see you next time.